Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Logan. Welcome to the live show here on WSJU Radio, here on YouTube. We got a lot to talk about. I missed you guys here last week, so we definitely got a lot to talk about, a lot going on in the NFL, a lot of storylines, and I cannot wait to get into it, folks. I really can't. We got a lot going on around the league. Honestly, I said it to a lot of my friends this weekend. Week 4 made me look stupid when we go around the league. The Giants really are looking rough this year. We're going to get into that. Zach Wilson and the Jets have a surprise performance. They didn't get the win, but they have a very, very good, a very surprising performance on Sunday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll get into that. We got a lot on the slate. A lot on the slate today for the show. And I mean, not only that, I do want to talk about a couple announcements that happened in other sports just to run it through for you UFC fans. Another big event was announced, and it was UFC 296. Sorry if on the stream the audio is messed up. I do have this new mic I'm trying to figure out. But we do have UFC 296 coming up, which I am very, very, very excited about. Let me just fix some technical difficulties here. But we do have UFC 296 coming up. It is scheduled for December 16th, which I am very, very, very excited for. The main event of that card will be Leon Rocky Edwards finally trying to get his first title defense after upsetting Kamaru Usman with that head kick heard around the world. And he will be fighting the one, the only, one of the best trash talkers in the UFC, Colby Covington, for that title. Now, that card itself will be absolutely, absolutely amazing. Not only that, the co-main event is Alexander Pantoja getting his first title defense against Brandon Royval, which, again, in that division, there's a lot of parity in that flyweight division. You know, it bounced between Figgy and Moreno for a while. Pantoja came in. He got on a win streak. He beats Moreno, and now he gets a chance to defend his title against Royval, who's also a very, very good fighter. Not only that on the card, we got Shavkat Rakhmonov. Sorry, he has a hard name to pronounce. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Now, that one should be an absolute brawl. Rakhmonov is a brawler. He's just one of those dudes. I can't remember where he's from. I want to say because he's not from Kazakhstan, or he's not from where Khabib and all them are from. I think he might be from Uzbekistan, is I want to say where Rakhmonov is from. But he is a brawler, man. Not only does he know how to wrestle, he knows how to do the whole nine. Wrestle, he can fight on the feet. He's got great hands. So definitely a person to look out for, and a fight to look out for is that fight of Rakhmonov versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Not only that on the card, we got Vincent Luque. Or not, before that, we got the El Cucuy fighting Patty the Batty Pimblett. Now, this one's a brawl. I don't really even know who to root for in this one. This one really goes back and forth. You know, I'm a huge El Cucuy guy. I'm a huge Tony Ferguson fan. I love him, and I don't want to see him lose, especially at the point in his career where Tony is at. I would love to see Tony be able to get a win here in 296, and obviously I'll go more into this as we get into December. But just with the announcement, I do like talking about this. But him fighting someone like Paddy is a big fight for both of them. Paddy is someone who the UFC wants to get a name out there for. He's had a couple good fights. He's coming off a loss in his fight that was going to kind of, right as he was getting on a win streak, kind of making a name for himself. He loses. So definitely beating Tony Ferguson will 100% fix that and make that better. But even besides that, you know, Tony Ferguson, it's a big fight for him. He's on, I think, a 6-fight losing streak, if I remember correctly. So that in itself is just very, very rough for him and a legend. It's hard to see Tony Ferguson go through a streak like this. So I feel like every UFC fan in general, not even just Tony Ferguson fans at this point, I feel like every UFC fan would like to see him get a win, especially over someone like Paddy Pimblett, who's not a bad fighter. I think they could brawl on the feet. And I'd love to see Tony get a finish. I doubt it, but I'd love to see that when this comes around. And then also on this card is Vincent Luque versus Ian Machado Gary. The good old Irishman, Ian Gary, coming off that big win over Neil Magny, will now fight Vincent Luque, which is a big fight in that division. Will definitely mess up the rankings. I think if Gary wins, he could even be boosted up into like fighting for a title shot. So, that's definitely a big fight for both of them. And honestly, 296 is arguably the best card coming up out of all these cards, and they just announced it. Because they don't got a lot for 294, even though it's in 2 weeks. You got Islam, you got Islam Charles, you got Cosme Paulo Costa, but besides that, there's not much at 294. I could do a quick Google search on my phone to really double check. But off the top of my head, UFC 294 really is a top heavy card, which isn't bad for 294 at all. But it's definitely a top heavy card in what it seems like. Let me see. UFC 297. Why 279 type in? Is this not? Oh, it's 294. That's why. I'm stupid. That's why. I got my numbers mixed up. Yeah, I mean, you got Johnny Walker on the card who, I mean, he's 20. He could make noise in that division, but he's fighting Ankalaev, if I think that's how you pronounce it. I've never known how to pronounce that dude's name, but he's really good. So I don't think that one's going to be much of a competition. And then UFC 295 is slowly building itself. UFC 295 is slowly building itself. Obviously, you got John Jones Stipe. You got Pereira versus Yuri Prochazka. You have Andrade fighting on that card. So that one is definitely one to look forward to and look up for these upcoming weeks for the UFC. But now you guys know the deal. I went over other sports, my little UFC rant. I know baseball playoffs are going on. You guys see the Braves jersey on the live stream. I'm not rooting for anyone in the playoffs this year. The Yankees got eliminated. I'm not a huge baseball guy, so once the Yankees kind of lose, I'm kind of shot. I know I talked about it a lot last year, but like I said, it's because the Yankees are there. I'm kind of shot. I'm not very interested. So it just is what it is. But really getting into football, week 4 was a doozy. And I really want to start, and I want to talk about, and I'm not talking about games specifically this week, especially because I missed last week in the show. So I kind of want to involve both weeks in what I'm talking about. So the first thing I really do want to talk about here are really the Giants and just how, I mean, my question to everyone here and everybody listening on the stream on the radio is, are the Giants the biggest disappointment in the league this year? Like, really, I talked very highly about the Giants going into the season. I talked very highly about them after seeing them in training camp. I talked very, very highly about the New York Giants this year. Their defense had stuff to improve on, but it seemed like they improved on the spots they needed to improve in. Their offense has seemed to get weapons to help Saquon not be the only piece of that offense. And Daniel Jones was coming off the best season of his career. And it seems something with Daboll's coaching that last year has really, I don't want to blame the coaching because I don't think it's coaching. I think Dable is a very, very, very good head coach, and I think he's very, I think he's very good at his job, and I think that I don't think he's the problem in New York at all. I think very much it's Daniel Jones and this Giants offense in general. You look at this Giants offense, right? They don't have a first half touchdown at all this season. They're being outscored. I don't know what it is. Let me think off the top. How much did Seattle score? 31? They're being outscored like 72-3 at home so far this year on primetime. Their only game so far this year, they came back down 21-0 at halftime. Like, you look at, like, and I'm usually a big eye test guy. I'm not big on stats because I think if you talk to a lot of people who have been around the sport of football for a while, and yes, I know I only played in high school. I'm not claiming I'm one of those people. But if you listen to a lot of NFL players talk, when they talk in the media, you listen to Pat McAfee, you listen to the J.J. Watts, the Von Millers, the Micah Parsons, they'll say it to you themselves. As much as stats can be used to prove any argument. They really can. You can find a stat for any argument. But I'm going to use those at first. Because obviously, everybody who has watched the New York Giants, they do not pass the eye test by any means. Even if the stats were there written out for the Giants to be like, yo, like, why are they not winning? You could see it on the field on why they're not winning. Daniel Jones is terrified. And without Saquon Barkley, they clearly have defenses aren't scared of them at all. They have no weapon that the defense is scared of on that offense when Saquon Barkley is out. Daniel Jones is already leading the league in interceptions. He has 6 interceptions, which is one more than he had all of last year. You guys gave up 11 sacks against Seattle. The O-line has looked terrible. You've given up 22 sacks this year. The only team with more than that is Washington with 24. The only team more than that is Washington with 24. On the season, counting the second half, they're being outscored 122-46. The Giants have a point differential of 76 points. You know how insane that is? The Giants have been outscored by 76 points this year. Their offense just consistently is ranking last across the entire league. They're last in yards, last in points, second to last in yards. There's just nothing clicking for this Giants offense. And Monday was an absolute, like, excuse me, but Monday was an absolute point. And what the issues are for the New York Giants. You look at Monday night, you look at 2 days ago. Like I said, you give up 11 sacks against a Seattle defense that isn't, I don't want to call them terrible, but first of all, they probably made a whole game plan about Jamal Adams blitzing on you. He gets a concussion in the fourth on his fourth play. On their fourth defensive play, Jamal Adams gets a concussion. So now Seattle's down one of their best players on their defense. And still the pass rush it looked like the Giants O-line was 5 pieces of paper on Monday night. That's what it looked like. It looked like the Giants threw out 5 pieces of paper that could snap a football on Monday night. Not only that, Daniel Jones has not been taking care of the ball this year. I spoke about the 6 interceptions total. He had 3 turnovers on Monday alone. He had 1 fumble. He had that 97-yard pick six that to me was the dagger for Seattle. Even though it wasn't like super late in the game, it happened early third quarter. The Giants couldn't get anything going in that game at all. And to throw that interception in that moment when all you had to do is, if you look at the replay, just be patient with the ball. Waller was going to get open. And even that, if I remember correctly, it was like a first or second and goal. You could, honestly, worst case scenario, you can take the sack. Yeah, it's not great, but you could do it. And then it's just Daniel Jones really hasn't been putting it up, and the injury to Saquon only proves that more, in my opinion. I feel like you look at what Matt Breida and Brightwell were able to do for the Giants on Monday was absolutely nothing. They were the run game was inexistent. The pass game was inexistent. If you watch the Manning cast, you had you had Will Ferrell making fake play calls. They were so bored. Like, it's just crazy to think about that the Giants' offense is doing everything opposite of what they did well last year. They protected Daniel Jones last year. They didn't turn the ball over. And now they come back. Maybe it's Saquon. Maybe it really is. It's Saquon is that important to this team. And I'm saying it right now for Saquon, who wants his money, and they just play Daniel Jones instead of him. He is sitting back in his chair laughing. He's cracking up, man. Saquon Barkley is absolutely cracking up, man. Because if you think about it, they're one win. He gets injured, but he has a game. He gets injured in the fourth quarter. The next two games the Giants have played, or I guess it's the next game. Yeah, the next two games the Giants played, they get absolutely mollywopped. Now, I will say, one of those games is San Francisco. Most teams are getting mollywopped against San Francisco, yes. I'll agree with that. 90% of teams are losing to San Francisco, and pretty heavily. But to lose like that to Seattle at home on a primetime game is embarrassing for the New York Giants. Like I said, the offense hasn't been performing this year. You're last in points, second to last in yards. Your defense is doing terrible. They're last in points, 19th in yards. Your defense doesn't have a single takeaway this year, while Daniel Jones is throwing the ball all over the place with 6 interceptions. And I don't even, as much as I want to blame him for the 6 interceptions, getting hit 22 times in 4 weeks is absolutely insane. That's almost 6 sacks a week that the New York Giants are giving up. That is insane. Like, from this point, I think it's obvious the Giants are not going to be a team this year. What do you like? You got to put some wins together at least. If you can't put wins together, you might no one's taking that. You're stuck with Daniel Jones. That's a big issue there too. Like, you are stuck with Daniel Jones. You end up in that situation where you just paid him all this money. He's gonna play like absolute doo-doo. He's gonna play like absolute like. No one wants him for that money. You are absolutely stuck with Daniel Jones right now. Unless he could figure his crap out, put 2 and 2 together, and start winning some games for the New York Giants. And not turn the ball over. Like, they turn the ball over so much this year. So much. They have the third most turnovers in the league, and then they don't have a single takeaway as a defense. The New York Giants are in a big, big issue right here, and they have to figure out what the solution is. Clearly, the solution is not Daniel Jones. I'll tell you that much. I mean, I'll say this, there are things you can do to fix it. As much as I want to say the issue is Daniel Jones, Hyatt's not getting enough snaps. I barely saw Hyatt on the field on Monday night. And I think he's probably your best receiver by now. I mean, maybe Campbell's okay. Slayton's okay. If you need to break a game open like the Giants need to do on Monday night, you need to get the ball to Jalin Hyatt. That's what you need to do. You need to get the ball to Jalin Hyatt. Run him on a post. Run him on a streak. You know what I mean? Run him on a go route down the seam. That's 90% of the time, that's a 1v1 route, whether you're in zone or not. There's one person on that. He's faster than half the league. They're in a bad spot, and they got a really tough stretch coming up too. They're in Miami and then in Buffalo the next 2 games. In Miami this week, like, I'm scared Miami might drop 70 again. With the way that offense is explosive. Yeah, we didn't see it against Buffalo, but I'm dead serious. With how explosive Miami's been at home, coming off a loss to Buffalo, a tough loss to Buffalo where their offense was like, they might bounce back and drop 70 again on this Giants team. I wouldn't, like, Obviously, I'm exaggerating with the 70. 70 is insane. But, and then Buffalo on top of that, the Giants might get scored like 100-0 in the next 2 weeks alone. You're in a bad spot if you're New York. You needed to get off to a good start. You really did. With the way that their schedule works out, you needed to get off to a hot start, and you didn't. And now you're in a really, really bad spot as Daniel Jones, as Brian Daboll, as the Giants. I almost want to call them the worst team in the league, but the Bears exist, luckily. For the New York Giants, luckily, for Giants fans out there, you guys are lucky. The Bears exist and the Broncos exist. Because those are the only two teams in the NFL right now that I can confidently say. I can't even confidently say the Broncos are worse than you. That's how bad the Giants look this year. 32nd in points, like I said. First in yards, or 31st in yards, 30th in points per game defensively, 19th in yards defensively. Giving up 22 sacks this year. Don't have a single first half touchdown. It's terrible. It is terrible. It is terrible. And as pessimistic as the Giants are, as pessimistic as they are, in the locker room across the way, the Jets, after last week, I feel like as the Jets, you got a lot of optimism. Do you not? Do you not have a lot of optimism going into this week as the New York after this week as the New York Jets? You figured it out. You figured it out. You figured out a game plan for Mr. Wilson. Mr. Hackett. Oh, why? I don't know why it blanked on Nathaniel Hackett's name. Mr. Hackett did it. With Aaron in the building, with T Swizzle in the building, Zach Wilson knew he had to show out, impress his crush, Donna Kelsey. I'm messing. But no, Zach really did have a good game against Kansas City, and I do appoint that to the game plan. Whether that is Nathaniel Hackett, whether that's Robert Saleh, they made Zach Wilson have a very, very, very good game plan in this game. If you look at the film, you're playing a Chiefs defense that through and through have always been a man coverage type of defense. They like to play a lot of man coverage. They like to play a lot of too high safety man coverage. So they were able to set up a game plan where Zach Wilson, it's been clear through the games that he plays that he thinks too much. His time to throw has been one of the highest in the league throughout the year. And throughout his career, his time to throw has been extremely high. You look at last week against New England, and I'll compare it to against Kansas City and why I think the game plan was so good. Against New England, Zach Wilson had 157 yards, no touchdowns, had a I think he threw an interception. He might have not. I didn't write it down. But I remember him throwing an interception. Not a great performance. He looked like he was seeing ghosts, like that Sam Darnold quote against that Patriots defense. It was rough for him. And if you look at the stats, he had to think a lot. His time to throw in that game was 3.22 seconds. On average, for 3.25 seconds, Zach Wilson had the ball. That is a lot of time in the pocket with the ball. That's a lot of time thinking. And Zach Wilson, as we've seen before with him, he has self-confidence issues. It's not a talent issue with Zach Wilson. And I've said that to a lot of people. It is not, I do not think at all it is a talent issue with Zach Wilson. I think it's a confidence issue. I think it's a mental issue. I think he gets in the pocket and he gets overwhelmed and he doesn't know how to think and he starts just holding on to the ball and he gets sacked. Or someone's in his face and he throws it picked and he gets scared. The game plan that Hackett had set up against Kansas City, because they're going to be in man coverage, is we're going to run timing routes. We're going to get the ball out of your hand like this, Zach, like this. We're going to get the ball out of your hand. Time to throw against Kansas City was 2.88. So about half a second less than against New England, which I know to a lot of people it sounds like half a second, like that's not. But if you look at the film and you look at the play the Jets were running, they were timing routes. They were timing routes. It wasn't, Zach, you have to make your read and go one. All right, One is the easiest read to make as a quarterback, obviously. I think that's an obvious statement to say. I heard Dan Orlovsky say it on ESPN Monday afternoon when he was talking about this game. And I'm sorry, Dan, I'm a huge fan of you, but in all honesty, let's be honest. That is one of the most obvious statements said. The easiest read for a quarterback is your first read. And the Jets set up a game plan so that was the only read Wilson had to make, was maybe a second read. But it was make the first read. If it's not there, check it down. That was the game plan. Now, the first read was someone different every play. That's how football works, obviously. Got the ball around. But like I said, you look at the film, a lot of it was these routes. It was a slant, and Zach Wilson hit him on the cut as he was cutting. Or it was a lot of these timing routes that the Jets practiced throughout the week. That really, it's a great game plan to, in my way, I feel like it's like a rookie game plan. You have to run with Zach Wilson. You see a lot of good coaches and a lot of good offensive coordinators do this for rookie quarterbacks, where I don't want to say simplify the offense, because the offense wasn't necessarily simplified as much as we're picking the plays to make the offense easier. If need be, there are 4 reads on this play that you could make if you need. But the point of this play is a timing route. The point of this play is to get the ball out of your hands as fast as possible. I think you see it with Mahomes' rookie year or his second year. He said it himself. He didn't know how to read a defense until the playoffs that year, because Andy Reid was so good at being like, these are the look here, look here, look here. Plus, I mean, it helps when you have Travis Kelce, but stuff like that helps when you set up a simplified offense for these younger quarterbacks to build the confidence that they need to build. And that is what Hackett was able to do for Zach Wilson against Kansas City. I mean, for the Jets this year in general, there's a lot that you need to do. I think the game plan, like I said, you have set up was good. I think it could work against a team like Denver. Philly's tough. They're not as much as a man team, but again, you get to Philly, you get to that bye week, you can really adjust. And not only that, you have Aaron saying all this stuff on the Pat McAfee show about how his goal is to return by the playoffs of this year. So that gives your team hope that Aaron can return and you could make a run in the playoffs if he feels he's fully healthy and makes that return somehow within a season with an Achilles tear. Would be absolutely, first of all, absolutely unreal out of Aaron Rodgers. My Lord, respect to him for being able to do that if he is. But you look at that, if you could end these 2 weeks 1-1, you get a win in Denver, you walk into the bye week 2-4, I think you're comfortable as the Jets. I really do. Because you don't have much of a gauntlet. Like the schedule kind of lightens up post-bye week for the Jets. You have the Giants post-bye week. I think you got a couple light teams in there. So it's definitely you lighten up after the bye week a little bit. You could get some wins together if you could figure out the Zach Wilson game plan. I think it works. I think it helps that Aaron's back, especially with the media. The media has gotten to Zach Wilson a lot over these past 2 or 3 years. The New York media is really, really beating on him real bad. And I feel Aaron there helps that a lot. Aaron, obviously, we know Aaron's never been in New York, but I will tell you this right now. If you don't think Aaron Rodgers, especially after the whole COVID situation and the immunized and the COVID toe and all that horse honky that Aaron Rodgers has been going around for the 3 years with the darkness retreats and the ayahuasca, Aaron knows how to handle the media. Like Aaron knows how to handle the media. I don't think that Aaron in the media is something that you have to ever worry about. Hence, I think he can talk to Zach and help him be like, yo, ignore them. They just like to write in their papers. They just like to talk on their podcasts. They're not on the field playing, man. That's what matters. So go out there and play the best football you can as Zach Wilson. Do what you know you can do. Be confident in your skills. As I feel like Aaron around the team will 100% help that. Within that game plan, I think you got to get Breece Hall the ball more. I think you got to get Garrett Wilson the ball more. Both of them. I mean, they're having okay years, but none of them are like blowing me out of the water because they're just not getting the ball. I feel like, especially Breece Hall, I feel like that team can run the ball a lot more than they do. He threw the ball 40 times against Kansas City. As good as Zach was playing, you could throw the ball 35 times and give Breece Hall another 5 carries. He's that good. Excuse me. But really, I think the Jets are in a very, very good spot. I think they're in a very, very interesting spot. I don't think you get rid of Zach Wilson especially at this point. I know you just signed Trevor Siemian, and a lot of people want different things to happen with Siemian and with this and with that and ups and downs and blah, 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 blah. No. I think you stick with Zach. I do. I really think you stick with Zach at this point. And I think you stick with Zach for the remainder of the season, and you make a game plan that you clearly saw works for Zach Wilson and is going to work for this team in the future going forward for them. Speaking of quarterbacks, though, I'm about to get on a very, very big rant. This is a personal rant because this one is about the New Orleans Saints. In case you guys didn't know, if you're a new listener on the radio, new follower on the podcast, I am a Saints fan. I'm a diehard Saints fan. I have been my whole entire life. Diehard Saints fan. Have been since as long as I could watch football. I have rooted for the New Orleans Saints. I was honestly very excited for this New Orleans Saints team this season. After a year where they were, not great. They were 22nd in points, 19th in yards, went 7-9. You know what I mean? Had some injuries. Came second in the division, missed the playoffs. Could have made the playoffs even, with Andy Dalton as our starting quarterback. We go into the offseason, blah, blah, blah happens. A lot's happening. I know the Saints need a quarterback. I want Lamar falls through. I want Deshaun falls through. I wanted Deshaun back then, that fell through, yada, 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 yada. We end up this offseason signing Derek Carr, who historically, not amazing, not great. And what I've seen out of Derek Carr this year has honestly been extremely, extremely disappointing. The Saints right now are actually worse offensively currently than they ended last year. Last year they ended 22nd in points, 19th in yards. They are currently 25th in points and 23rd in yards. Derek Carr this season only has 2 touchdowns through 4 weeks, has 2 interceptions through 4 weeks. I mean, he has a good amount of, it's just, I don't know. If you really want me to sit here and break it down, I don't like Derek Carr's decision-making on the football field personally. I mean, I'm not a quarterback. I can't say I am an NFL quarterback. I can't say I know what an NFL quarterback goes through mentally on an NFL football field. I have no clue. But what I do know is when you're in the pocket for 4 seconds and I'm seeing Alvin Kamara open as the check down, don't take the sack. Check it down. Get 3 yards, please. The thing is about Carr and Tampa, against Tampa, he had a very, very bad game. I'll admit that. Tampa, the Saints sitting at 2-2 right now. Like, he got injured against Green Bay. That is half the reason I feel like we lost. Obviously, there's no excuses. We lost the game. The game's a loss. By the time we get to week 17, are we going to be saying, if Derek Carr was injured in week 3 against the Green Bay Packers, the whole Saints season would be different, I swear. The whole season, the Saints would have undefeated. No, I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is the Carr we saw against Green Bay and the Carr we saw against Tampa were clearly 2 different people. Maybe it was because of the injury. Maybe the shoulder was still lingering a little bit. Maybe Carr shouldn't have played this week. He just didn't play well, and this week really got me. Like, it really, as someone who was 50-50 on Derek Carr going into the week, this week really put me on the negative side, just because there were a lot of times where I feel like he was kind of just chucking the ball up. He had an average of 0.4 yards in the air per completion. So, and for you, those of you who kind of don't understand what that stat means, it's how many yards past the line of scrimmage on average was the completed pass. So not like the full reception. As soon as the pass is caught, that's where that stat ends. This year, it's not terrible for Carr this year. 5.1 air yards per completion. It seems pretty average. I mean, it's on the lower side, but that's not terrible. Against Tampa, he had a 0.4. He averaged less than a air yard per completion against Tampa Bay. And that's because I felt like he was chucking them up and it wasn't working. And do I want to completely blame Derek Carr? No. There was pressure in his face all day against Tampa. The Saints' offensive line is not playing great this year. We have the 6th most sacks allowed in the NFL. We've allowed 13 sacks. Now, compared to the Giants, that sounds like nothing with 22. But it's still the 6th most in the NFL. 13 sacks through 4 weeks is a lot. It's a lot. So the Saints, they really, I feel like, got to figure out where they are and what they're doing with this. Because you look at a lot of things. Offensively, it's just not there. The defense played great through the first 3 weeks. Against Tampa, they definitely had a rough outing against Tampa last week. But, on average, they average 4 yards. Like, they're allowing 4 yards per carry this year. Tampa had 5. Tampa had 5.5 yards per play. The Saints are average, giving up 4.5. Like, the Saints defense did not play well against Tampa Bay. But in general, the Saints defense has been playing well this year. They're a top 10 defense in points. They're a top 12 defense in yards. They are a very, 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 very high-skilled defense and a very high-skilled team. You get a lot of situations there with them that are really interesting. They really are. They're really interesting to see what the Saints can do. Their defense is playing well, and it's just the offensive production is not adding up for the Saints. You get Kamara back last week, and he played well last week. He had what do you have? He had 84 total yards last week against Tampa Bay. Obviously, like, he's a stud. He had 1,300 total yards. He had 1,400 practically. It was 13-9. So he had 1,400 total yards last year. He's a dog. He averages 58 yards per game throughout his career. Like, Kamara's a big part of this offense. He's an absolute dog. So to get him back is huge for the Saints and this offense to hopefully figure something out and really get this offense going, because it is really – it's one of the more – it's not the Giants offense. It's not the Bears, but it is it's just a boring offense. There's no play actions downfield, there's no explosiveness. It reminds, like, the Pittsburgh Steelers are the same way, and I know a lot of people are talking about them right now. Like, there's just nothing there. No explosiveness out of this Saints offense. And it's really, really tough to watch. It really is. And we'll really see where it goes and how they pick up. Again, the offense has to pick up the slack. Michael Thomas is obviously a big target. Olave leads the team in receiving yards. But both of them against, like, you see, maybe it's the injury. Maybe that's why the offense looked so bad against Tampa. But I don't feel like they look great against Tennessee in week 1. I don't feel like they look great against Carolina in week 2 either. I feel like the only game where I felt like I liked the Saints offense was against Green Bay. And that was only for one half I enjoyed the offense. Second half, we got shut out. The Saints offense really needs to pick it up, man. And I don't know if I should blame Derek Carr. I don't know if it's Pete Carmichael on his play calling. I don't know where it is for the Saints team that's really messing it up, but they need to figure it out. They need to pick up the slack for this defense. Because I think if they do, they have a team that's sneaky good. and it's not just my bias saying that. I genuinely think they're sneaky good with Derek Carr. If he could play his best football, I think they're sneaky good. I do. I do. I do. Saints got a tough and their upcoming schedule again. Like they're in New England this week. I think that's the toughest thing upcoming. They're Jacksonville at home, maybe. Houston's on a roll. Like I'll give them that. Houston's on a roll right now. CJ Stroud is playing absolutely out of his mind this year. I don't think he has an interception through his first 4 games, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I want to say he's like second in pass yards, maybe third. He's top 5, 100%. I think he's even top 3 so far this season in pass yards. CJ Stroud is absolutely tearing it up so far for Houston, and I honestly didn't even see it the first 2 weeks just because Houston seemed so boring to me. And then they got that surprise win against Pittsburgh last week. I'm not going to lie, really put me on the map. Really put me on the map for Houston. A surprise win with CJ Stroud. He's playing like an absolute dog right now. Obviously, rookie of the year. My dog of the week, actually, getting into that. He is my certified dog of the week. Does go to CJ Stroud with how he played and how he has been playing. I want to give him recognition just based off how he's been playing through the first quarter of the season so far this year. But again, that Houston offense has been humming. The defense ain't great, so I think the Saints. I think the Saints can win that. But speaking of teams that on the opposite end of the spectrum, maybe teams that are good. A lot of the teams that have been dominant this year have been staying dominant, and I do want to touch on that before I start getting into next week. Like I do kind of want to just like kind of do my little like loose thought around the league. You know, you got I'm going to start with the teams that I'm just obviously been dominating this year. You get the Bills. The Bills had a huge win last week. Shout out to them over the Dolphins. See, people keep forgetting how good this Bills defense is, man. They really keep forgetting how good this Bills defense is. It's absolutely unreal, man. It's so good. You get like holding Tyreek Hill to 58 yards and no touchdowns. Micah Hyde has a touchdown. Jalen Waddle had like only 60 yards. Absolutely dominating performance. Micah Hyde got a big interception. An absolutely dominating performance for the Buffalo Bills. Their offense is humming too. 2nd in points, 6th in yards. Josh Allen is 6th in pass yards this year. He's tied for 2nd in touchdowns. So Stephon Diggs is 1st in receiving touchdowns. They're out of this world, man. The Bills are good. And I think honestly, I don't want to call them the team to beat in the AFC. I think that's still Kansas City. But I want another rematch in the playoffs between these two because the way that these two have been playing this year, absolutely ridiculous. Like on that note, I'll talk about the Chiefs too. They're also humming. Their offense is 9th in points, 3rd in yards. They got one of the best offenses in the league after that tough, hard-fought win in New York. You get the T Swizzy effect that's clearly helping them with Travis Kelce and T Swizzy down there. It's definitely big things are happening in the AFC. You get the Cowboys this year who've been dominant outside of their one loss to Arizona. I don't know why I blanked on that. And they play San Francisco on Sunday night this week, which should be a absolute clinic. San Francisco, again, was another one of those dominant teams that I do really want to talk about and get into a little bit. Christian McCaffrey is having an absolute unreal year. Wow. Unreal year for him. Just absolutely 7 total touchdowns, 600 total yards, 500 of which are on the ground. But CMC's an absolute weapon. I think he had like 30 fantasy points last week for one of my fantasy teams. Absolute dog out of CMC. Defense is doing what it normally does. They're 1st in points, 2nd in yards. They're probably the best defense in the league right now. Yeah, they're probably the best defense in the league right now, hands down. I won't say hands down. Dallas has been doing really good, but I'll give it to San Francisco just because I love San Francisco's front 7 so much with Fred Warner, with with Nick Bosa, Teron Armstead. You got a lot of studs, a lot of people I like on that team. And also in the NFC, you got the Eagles, which, I mean, the Eagles' defense is not playing as well as they did last year. Their defense was absolutely dominant last year. You're not seeing that same dominance out of their defense, but you are seeing that same play out of at least Hurts. I personally think their wide receivers got to get going a little bit more. I think A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith got to get on a little bit of a roll. But DeAndre Swift is an absolute stud for that team. He had 200 yards almost against Minnesota 2 weeks ago. And then had I want to say it was like a buck 20 or like a buck 30 against Tampa. He's been going absolutely off this year. I said it when they traded for him. I said he was going to fit like a glove into that offense, and what'd he do? He fit like a glove. That's what he did. He fit like a glove in that offense, and he's a stud. I told you guys to be scared. If there was one take I'm running with to my grade, it was that DeAndre Swift take last year. I told everyone. I go, that is the most terrifying trade I've ever seen the Eagles make, outside of the A.J. Brown trade the year before. Yeah, they play who do they play this week? They're in L.A. They play the Rams this week. They actually got an easy stretch. They're in L.A., then they're in New York to play the Jets. I think that's a good game for them. I talked about that for the Jets. I think that's a good game for the Eagles. And then they play Miami, which will be a great game. A great game. Before I get into next week, I did give up my dog of the week, which was my next thing I was going to get into. My dog of the week is C.J. Stroud for that Houston team. Just obviously playing like an absolute stud this year. He really is. I could pull it up right now because I have a tab open with it from yesterday with where he is in passing yard. He's fourth in the league as a rookie. Doesn't have an interception yet this year. Has 6 touchdowns. Anything else that's like a cool... He's completing the ball well, too. 63%. He's dogging it this year. C.J. Stroud's having a great year, and he's proven a lot of people wrong. When you look at the other rookie quarterbacks, too, you got Anthony Richardson. He's playing pretty well, too. Bryce Young, You got rookies are making big names this year. You got Achane in Miami. A lot of big rookies this year are making a lot of big plays. Speaking of big plays, there's one player who makes a lot of big plays, in my opinion. And he's on a team that's a lot of bad. And I do want to just touch on them for a little bit and how bad I've seen this Bears team be. Sorry to anybody out there who's a Bears fan. Much love. Much love to the Bears fans. It's a rough one. 28-7. That's a rough loss. I don't want to say it's all Fields, but I can't say it's not Fields. But I don't think Eberflus knows what the hell he is doing. I'm sorry. I think I don't know. I think it was a bad hire. I think Matt Eberflus is doesn't really know what he's doing. Really. And then you got a lot of situations where weapons seem to be weapons and they don't. They traded for Claypool last year. That hasn't worked out. He's done absolutely nothing and then got shunned from the team this week. So, Bears fans, you got the 1 and 2 pick right now, and I feel like that's the way you should keep looking. Keep that as the optimism. Good luck this season, boys. Good luck. Good luck to the Bears. The Bears. The Bears are terrible. That's what it is. It's the Bears are terrible. What else is going on around the league? Before I get in the next week and end this stream, before I go on the log rundown. The rundown. Oh, this just clicked in my head. I didn't write it down. Big news for fantasy owners and honestly just football in general. Jonathan Taylor seems to be back with the Colts this week. The Colts announced that he practiced yesterday after all of this, his ankle injury and all of this. So this is interesting because we remember that whole thing that happened earlier this year with JT and the whole trade situation. He wanted gone. He's not getting his money. And was he really injured? Was he not? This, that. He stepped away from the team. Now he's back with the Colts. seems to be getting practices in. Steichen said he's excited. Steichen said Taylor said he's excited to be back. So hopefully they repaired that. He's a big part of that Colts offense that, honestly, if they get him back, if they get JT back, Colts are kind of scary. The Colts are a little scary if they could get JT back. You never know. Never know. But that's all I got for the past week. Week 4 was a doozy, man. You look back, like I said, you get JT back, you got all that. The Giants are the Giants. You got a lot of teams across the league. You got Miami. Miami's the best offense in the league. I didn't really talk about them, but I talked about the Bills beating them. Miami's been absolutely unreal this year, the way that their offense has been running. So this week I'm not going to do the spreads because I feel like that kind of throws me off on a flow sometimes. So I want to not do the spreads this week. I will be betting, though, myself. So the spreads will matter, but spreads change. I tell you the spread on Wednesday. It's not going to be the spread by the time we get to Sunday. So I'm just going to do my picks in general for this weekend. Starting with Thursday Night Football, we have the Chicago Bears traveling into Washington to play the Washington Commanders. And by God, are these just two teams that are on completely different ends of the spectrum right now. The Commanders are coming off a really tough loss. There's no moral victories in the NFL, so I can't call this a moral victory. But they're coming off a really, really tough loss in Philadelphia against the Eagles, trying to hand them the first loss of this year, while the Bears are also coming off a tough loss in Denver. Now, the difference is one is a lot more depressing than the other. While the Commanders were in the game the whole time and they ended up losing and blowing a 7-point lead, they didn't lose a 28-7 lead in the matter of a quarter. Thursday night primetime, I think Bears might fall under pressure. I think Commanders might fall under pressure. I think this game's close. I don't think it's very interesting. Sam Howell's been getting sacked a lot this year, but the Bears' defense isn't very good. This is very much not a great game to watch for Thursday night. But because of just certain weapons, because of, Brian Robinson, because of Brian Robinson, because of, what's his name? I can't remember his name right now. Scary Terry McLaurin, because of a lot of these weapons that I just don't see on the Bears outside of Fields, and you got Fields, you got what's his name that they just got? DJ Moore. Khalil Herbert's okay. You don't got a lot of weapons down there. Give me the Commanders to win this game. Then moving on to Sunday, bright and early on the East Coast, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Pacific Time. We are traveling back overseas to good old London, good old Wembley Stadium to see the Buffalo Bills play the Jacksonville Jaguars. Wow, my British accent turned that went Irish and the Scottish. That was rough. Thank God I'm not British. But you got the Buffalo Bills over there in Wembley Stadium playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are coming off a win in that exact stadium against the Atlanta Falcons. Or maybe, if you watched it, maybe they weren't in Wembley Stadium. Maybe to you they were in Andy's room. Maybe you were watching Toy Story. That one was fun. Toy Story stream was interesting. I don't know how you guys felt about it. That Toy Story stream was something interesting. I feel like there was kinks to figure out, but I personally like it better than the Nickelodeon streams. Yeah, leave your opinions. Tell me. Say them in the chat. Leave them in the comments if I post this. Say your opinions definitely on that Toy Story game, because I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a cool way to get the kids interested into football. I saw a lot of people post a lot of stuff, like a lot of analysts, a lot of former football players posting their kids really glued to the screen, really, really interested in that. So I'm happy. I'm happy that happened. All right. So, bad news. I do sadly have to go. My time has run out. I was not able to finish the rundown. I'm sorry for you guys. For the YouTube guys, I think I might film it as a YouTube video this week, actually. So definitely for you guys listening on the radio, please go